How to use BEAMAGE-M2. This is what it's all about in today's Gentec-EO wiki. Hey, what's up everyone? Kevin here from Gentec-EO, your partner for accuracy as always. Okay, today we're going to take a look at our BEAMAGE-M2 system, specifically how to use it with our PC-BEAMAGE software. Now, for this video, we really want to show you the steps in the software itself to make an M2 measurement. And so we won't show the steps that come before that, like beam alignment, beam attenuation, and so forth. So just as a reminder, before you can even start making M2 measurements, you're supposed to have less than 1 watt right here before the first mirror. Otherwise, you may saturate the sensor or even maybe damage something along the beam path. And by the way, these two mirrors right here are not in the M2 system when you buy it. I'm just using them to guide my laser into the system. And speaking of which, for this video, I will be using an helium neon laser at 633 nanometers. So, you know, it's just a red laser. And I already chose a lens that I know is going to work well with my laser, which is the 300 millimeter lens. And it's just a few milliwatts. And the M2 value is typically between 1.05 and 1.15, something like that. And so let's check it out. Okay, so we got PC-BEAMAGE already open. First thing I want to do is go in the Advanced tab, then press the M2 button right here, which gives us access to the M2 controls. Before you go further, you should change the wavelength here for what you have, which is 633 nanometers in my case, and change the focal length of the lens that you're using. It's 300 millimeter in my case. By the way, if you forget to change these parameters before starting the measurement sequence, it's not really a problem because these parameters only affect the calculations, which is the very final steps of the whole sequence. So it doesn't really matter too much. So now to understand how the software works when it comes to M2 measurement, you have to keep in mind that there are two main steps, okay? The first step is the setup step. And basically it's just the system optimizing the conditions before the measurement itself, okay? And the second step is the measurement sequence itself, after which we get an M2 value. The setup step, you know, the first one, it needs to be done only once, and it stays valid as long as you keep the software open or as long as your measurement conditions stay the same. In other words, when you do it, when it's done, you can keep making M2 measurements back to back and you don't need to run the setup again. So like I said, the first step is the setup step, which you can begin by clicking this button right here, Run M2 Setup. Now this pop-up basically just means, do you want to do a M2 measurement once the setup part is done? And for the purpose of this video, yes, we want to do that. We want to do a measurement after that. Now, while the system is doing its thing, I would explain what's going on. So first, the software does a rough scan of the beam caustic to find where the beam waist is located. We're doing that for two reasons, okay? So the first one is to do the background subtraction at the beam waist, which is the optimal position to do it. And then second, so that the measurement scan will be done closer to the beam waist, which is best if we want to get the most accurate and repeatable measurements. And as you can see, the process is fully automated except for one part, which is when the software will ask you to block the beam. So make sure to block the laser first and then press the OK button. When the background is pitch black, you can unblock the laser. But if you're not sure when that's the case, the software will just eventually let you know that you can unblock the laser. Alright, so just like that. So yeah, let me turn back on the laser. Again, this is the only time you must intervene in this whole process. And that's it, the setup step is over, just like that. So now the software begins the measurement process itself, because remember we chose that option. So this process takes about a minute or two, so we'll just speed it up a little. So you can press OK right here, and then we are sent to the Results tab, and there you go. The M-squared values are right here. So we got 1.125 in X and 1.127 in Y, which are pretty much on par with what we were expecting for this Iridium Neon laser. If I go back in the Setup tab, you can see now that the Run M-squared Setup button changed to Cancel Background, and a new button called Start ISO Scan is now available. So the Cancel Background button, like the name says, should be used if you feel like you need to do the setup sequence again. Start ISO Scan is the button to do a M-squared measurement only, without the setup sequence again. So you will press that if you want to make some more M-squared measurements. Now we call it an ISO scan because measuring with that button will guarantee that you get a measurement that follows the ISO 11146 guidelines, which are pretty much a reference when it comes to M-squared measurement. Alright, so now I want to show you how to make a quicker M-squared measurement. So this method can shorten the scanning time by about 50%, if not more actually. But just keep in mind that you may not get a measurement that follows the ISO recommendations when you do what we're about to do. Let's clear our previous data. Okay, so what you're going to do is click here on Settings under User Defined Scan. You can check the box here next to Calculate Settings from last scan. This basically tells the software that we want to use the parameters that we found during the setup step. And so the scan will be close to the beam waves, which is what we want. Now this specified steps box right here is the key to making the measurements shorter. Our ISO scan option comes with 30 steps, so that is why it's a little longer, you know, but it ensures that we will comply with the ISO guidelines. So if we want to make it faster, we could change it to say 10 steps, and now the measurement time will effectively be 1/3 of the time that it took for the ISO scan to complete. And with that, you can press Start. And finally, as you can see, we get M-squared results that are pretty much on par with what we had before actually, so it's pretty good. You will generally get some pretty accurate and repeatable measurements with this quick method. But again, very important, you have to keep in mind that this set of data right here is not ISO 11146 compliant. Alright, that's it. So we hope this gave you a good overview on how to use BEAMAGE-M2. Don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions, or if you have any suggestions for videos, don't hesitate. So see you another time.